it's a kind of a twofer. So we're going to start with an overview. This is provided by St. Augustine in Florida, that Orchid Society. And it's heavily leaned a lot for pests in Florida, and luckily in California, we don't have as many of these pests because we are a drier climate. You see everything up here? My approach is to try to give you a kind of a simple understanding of how to go ahead and maybe eradicate the pests that you have. Since most of us have small collections, not a huge amount, we're not commercial growers or anything close to that, we kind of have a slightly different approach that we can take. I think part of that is that we are in an urban center. We have our neighbors. So I like to try to present non-toxic approaches, things that are not harmful to the environment, and things that will still be very effective, and things that are easy for you to do. So I think it's really important, though, to know what we're talking about. And part of it is of getting rid of pests is we kind of have to have a little understanding of their life cycle, of how insects live and develop. So, and this covers a little of it. It's very easy to follow. Oh, did I go too fast? So, recognizing the good guys. So lots of times, I still volunteer at volunteer. I still work 2 days at a nursery, a little nursery in Seal Beach. And I get people with, what is this? What is this? They take a picture or they bring a leaf in. And sometimes in here, you got to recognize the good from the bad. So in here is the pointer. I was doing good until I sat down. There. Oh, for God's sakes. There. So ladybugs, a lot of people get confused sometimes that these are aphids. So don't think that is what, is causing your problem. You want to keep ladybugs around to get rid of aphids. They're one of the best things you can have. The stage, the nymph of the larval and nymph stage look nothing like a mature ladybug. And sometimes people think like it's a beetle or something that's causing damage. So sometimes you might want to remember, maybe remember this talk and think of ladybug and just do life cycle of a ladybug, and we'll show you the different ones. These are a little different, but a lot of small flies and hoverflies, small little wasps, and even the larger wasps, they are hunters, and they often inject their eggs into like caterpillars. It's a very common thing. So sometimes you might think, oh, get rid of this thing, but those are beneficial. And then pathogens, some type of growth on host fires stuff are beneficial to eliminating the problem. But that's probably beyond a lot of our skill sets. I don't worry about that one. I pointed it there, but what am I doing wrong? Do I have to? Which button are you pushing? I'm down. Isn't down? Yeah. If I go back. Okay, key factors. So Not going back down. Not going down. What does UF? Oh, that's who that's by. So, and of course, you just like the first part. Is what you're first seeing, is that a pest? And what is the damage that is incurring? So, like when we see this bud that is damaged, we know that we have a chewing problem. So we're looking for either a caterpillar or an insect that can chew and do the damage to create something like that. That's a type of lacewing, which is, yeah, that is working. Yeah, I guess. So I'll just won't. And this is just reiterating different types of beneficial, different types of pests. Ladybugs. This one, no, I don't want to touch that. This black and brown one, which I don't know if we get that, but that really goes after mealybugs. Wouldn't that be nice to have? But I don't think we'd want it in our house. I just don't. Okay. So environments that are favorable, obviously, if we're growing orchids, humidity, insects just thrive in humid conditions, and things like slugs and snails, which are definite pests, do the same. And when do the problems occur? Springtime, winter is usually pretty dormant, but then we get into spring and things seem to take off with new growth. Problems occur usually when you can also bring in a new plant, or you might find that one plant gets badly infected and it's passed on to the rest of your collection. Do I press up?
Down.
I keep pressing down, but. Maybe I have to press towards you.
The receiver's over here.
Okay. All right. So I'll do that. So, and this is looking at things. Are we looking at something that is piercing and sucking? Piercing and sucking would be like aphids, mealybugs, the different types of scale that we can have, spider mites, whitefly. These are all sucking pests. So they drain a plant. They can also do some structural damage as well. Or is it chewing? So I think the big chewers that we have are caterpillars, but they don't often get on. But slugs and snails. Why does that? I know but I'm not touching the pointer. Yes. Well, yeah. So, but I'm not touching. It's down here. This is the laser, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that.
Very good.
Up. Now back up. And this be going back. Okay, so down. So we start off with, again, like I said, aphids, scales, whitefly, mealybugs, true bugs, thrips. Thrips are really small, black, and they usually go after flowers. So they make them unsightly. And they usually are in will get underneath or whatnot. So they can all, of these, I think probably scale is probably the worst. Whitefly, it just kind of depends. I've never personally have had a lot of trouble with whitefly on my orchids, but you might have a different one. We'll talk about how to get rid of them. And the problem is you've often heard honeydew. And so often you'll know if you have a problem, probably in the house. All of a sudden you'll come by and you'll feel the countertop where you maybe have your plant is sticky. And that's because these are sucking pests either, and they can be the spider mites, but they can also be any of the others. They can be mealybugs as well, scale to a certain degree, aphids definitely, and and that honeydew can attract ants, which will protect their food source because they'll get the nutritious sap off of the sucking insects, and also it can cause a fungus to grow on the leaves. Often people notice, oh, I have this black fungus growing on the top of my leaves. That's usually the problem with having some type of sucking insect on your leaf. Grasshoppers are a problem. But I haven't had much of a problem. The thing you need to know about they're a resilient, big insect. So to try to kill them, you're going to have to use something pretty potent. The best thing you can do is to try to get them when they're very, very small. Get some spray on them, even if it's like a soapy spray or that's insecticidal soap or an insecticidal oil. You will get that onto their body, and that body will that soap will cause deformations to their exoskeleton, and that will they won't be able to mature properly. But trying to get rid of mature grasshoppers, like just pray that the birds come to your rescue. Caterpillars, I think caterpillars are probably another really big problem, probably the biggest problem we face in the garden, at least in my experience. And a good, safe thing to use is BT. And BT is, you can mix it up. It's Bacillus thuringiensis. You only make it up as needed in quantities that you need because it won't survive for long on the plant. So you can't use it as a preventative. You have to use it when you see it. You soak the leaf. The bacteria gets into the gut of the caterpillar and it stops all digestion of the caterpillar. Very, very, very effective. Yeah.
Would it keep also already mixed, or do you have to use it?
No, you got to use it. Yeah, so you can't make a big batch up. So that's why I brought these little sprayers. Yeah, don't be afraid to make a small amount. I know the mathematics sometimes, the math, it seems intimidating, but you don't have to waste a lot. And you know, it's especially with other insecticides that are toxic. You know, who wants that toxic out there? But the Bacillus thuringiensis, totally safe, doesn't harm any birds, doesn't hurt any other organisms except the caterpillars. You'll see it commonly, yeah, because they're not going to put Bacillus thuringiensis on there. It's just intimidate everybody. I want to just kill the bugs. So it's usually just called BT. Make it easy, BT. Yeah, so now this is a big problem. So, and to me, I always think these are the these two scale. So in literature, you'll also see this as called hard scale or armored scale. And then you have soft scale. So you can imagine which is worse. So armored scale is tougher. And then we'll get to mealybugs, but they have this waxy-like coating, and this is just kind of showing the animal itself hiding underneath there. It lays its eggs underneath that canopy, and it also is protected by this. And those eggs, when they hatch, they crawl out, and they move along. They're called crawlers. So that's important to know when you see scale, is you have to get rid of the adult, and you have to also you'll have this recurring of the eggs coming out, the nymphs coming out. They crawl when they first start out, and they'll crawl away. They'll go to a new area, and then in a short time, they'll go into a second phase of the nymph, and then they'll mature. And it's a rather quick process, but the idea being is that you have to be on top of this. If you think one spraying is going to get rid of all your scale, you're probably wrong.
Gary,
Yes.
are those IDs split? Isn't the one on the right a brown armored scale? And the one, I don't know, but I can't really see the one on the left.
On the one on the left, I'm a little thing, but that looks like a brown scale to me also.
Yeah. Like
But this one isn't as apparent to me, and I think it's probably a hard scale. It's one that I'm not familiar with. Yeah. And it might be something that's more common in Florida. But when you see something like this, the other thing I will also say is something that can look like a giant mealybug or a giant scale is actually praying mantis also produce a egg structure where they deposit their eggs that look kind of alien and kind of look like a big scale, but they can be like, you can see like maybe an inch long or some even larger. But I wasn't aware of that and until I moved into Long Beach, where I have plenty of critters. Powdery mildew. Now I don't get how many people get. Well, okay. How many get it first in their yard? Well, no, powdery. I'm sorry. The mealybugs. Not if I said mildew, I'm sorry. How many get it in the house? On house plants and orchids? Really? Oh yeah. And how many get the mealybugs outdoors? Wow. No, that's fungus. So they're two different things. This isn't a great because but if you look, now it's probably too hard to see. Well, it's not going to have it there. But if you see these little projections, maybe the next slide will have it. So here you see it. So mealybugs always have these little projections, these little fires. When they mass together, you get a huge clumping of them. Then they get really fuzzy and stuff and almost look like powdery mildew. But powdery mildew is just it's a fungus, the common fungus that we have. Just like on a rose, or like rust on a rose, or not to be confused with. These are spider mites, which are magnified up, and thrips. So let's now go down. So scale. The first that I always could see them is, you see these yellow blotches? The first indication that you might see, you'll see a little concentric circle that will be bleached out of chlorophyll. And you'll see it on the top, but you'll see usually that scale underneath. And that's a call to action anytime you see it. It's like, don't think, oh, I wonder, let the left side of the brain talk to the right side of the brain. Let it be loud and clear. Oh, I got a problem. And for years, I didn't think that was a problem. And then I turned something off. Also, the other big problem is that protective sheath that sometimes covers a pseudobulb, which is also very common in cymbidiums. That's a great place for scale and mealybugs to get into, but especially for scale. And if left, and there's different types of scale. They have the hard and the soft. A hard one also, Sherry, is below Duval, which are like filaments, and they're just layered and layered upon one another, and they have a very deep sucking mechanism. That proboscis goes deep into the tissue of an orchid or in the plant that it's on, and you want to be careful of what type of solution you put onto it. Like, you wouldn't want to use rubbing alcohol. Sometimes people use rubbing alcohol for just a quick cleanup, because that solution can then follow those punctures into the tissue of the orchid and start killing off, if it's the wrong type of chemical, like rubbing alcohol, and kill off healthy cells and do even more damage. And of course, the scale, it attracts ants, and ants is something, you want to try to keep control of around your collection, because ants can spread a lot of these insects. And this is a beau devoir. See how it's kind of reminiscent of maybe mealybugs in a way, but it starts out very, very small, very, very small, looks kind of fuzzy, but it's really so small. And this probably looks almost, but you see how you have that protective sheath down here of brown, they get in underneath that, and cattleyas and cyclias, they'll get deep into phalaenopsis also. And then, cymbidium's a real problem. But they're not difficult. Protea scale, I don't know a lot of these, and then the Florida red scale, probably we don't have a whole lot of, and that looks also kind of like almost like a brown scale down in the lower right corner. But scale is scale is scale, and usually you don't want to see like a huge collection. That just means you've waited too long, and it's never good to wait too long. But still, not all that difficult to get rid of. This is the one that we see a little more common, soft brown scale. Starts out very much looking, here's a collection on, You could see that as being a cymbidium. It isn't a cymbidium. I think that's a terrestrial orchid. Orchid mealybug. How many people, the common way that I have always gotten rid of mealybug is Q-tip, rubbing alcohol, followed by a little water spray. And do it early. And you just gently touch the mealybug, and you can see the rubbing alcohol, just capillary action, goes into the mealybug, and usually that's pretty good. And then a couple of days later, you can spray with a soapy solution, wash them off.
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't need to. Love it with talking. And this is earlier, there was a picture, a mealybug destroyer that looks like it could be a bug, but actually they're predatory on different types of mealybugs. But that's probably not going to be in our house or in our garden. I've never seen one of these. Thrips. Thrips really cause a lot of deformity to flowers. And so that's something they usually like dry conditions, hot, dry conditions. And boy, usually and this is the discoloration. They can cause flowers to abort. And it's probably, if you see the conditions coming on, I sometimes just spray a flower with the water to try to rinse them off. It's not an easy thing to get to combat, because because they get in there. But so washing plants off with water, it's really kind of funny is that a lot of people forget that just sometimes a good technique of growing is just rinsing your plants. For years, I've kind of made a very, very light solution of a true soap, like a fatty acid phosphorus base soap, like what I'll show up here, a dilute one. So and just rinse off a lot of my plants using that. If you have a small collection, it works fine. If you have a huge collection, it's a little more difficult. But it's just rinsing a plant off keeps a lot of things off. It keeps the dust and pollutants off, and it allows natural predators that might be there to go ahead and to be your first line of defense. It says home remedies. To me, I don't know what she kind of meant by home remedies. I don't know if it's like grandma's elixir or what. Chicken soup. I don't know that, but I think a lot of I think washing off plants, that's kind of to me like a home remedy. But it's cultural also. So I don't discount home remedies, but you want, make sure it comes from a reliable source. Rubbing alcohol, like I said, it in little amounts really quick. It's very, very good. It gets mealybugs in about, I think, better than anything. And I've been using it for, 30, 40 years doing that. But I don't really agree with using it as a spray, because rubbing out, have you ever had a cut and grandma wanted to put rubbing alcohol on it to clean the wound? Well, that hurt and hurt because it gets in there and it kills the good along with the bad. So you can do damage with that, but that's why I'm including some free Q-tips on the auction table. Oils and soaps, I think And so this is where most of mine will be, because we're going to look at, again, like I said, natural versus synthetic. And we look at natural, non-toxic, synthetic, toxic. So there are environmental implications. There's health implications also for us. I mean, if you have respiratory problems, if you suffer from allergies, you don't want to have these toxins. You don't want to be breathing them in. Oils and soaps are very beneficial. They're natural. They tend to dissipate. They break down rather quickly. There are some naturals that also do the same. But old things like, like DDT, we all know about that. Then malathion. You can open up a bottle of malathion and you've opened up something. Yeah. And it just, so that's all I'm kind of saying that. You want to be careful when we're not really talking about detergents. We're talking about old-fashioned soaps, which hardly are around anymore. They're specialty items now. Whereas when we were, a lot of us, when people my age were kids, they were very, very plentiful. So we're talking about fatty plant fats mixed with phosphorus that create these soaps that, and they use like olive. Coconut oil is another common one that was used. Sometimes soy or lanolins are used. So when you use these, the soaps or oils, and you'll see these, and you can purchase them pre-made, but you can make them yourself, and that's why I have the ingredients here. The oils are there are natural oils, and then there's mineral oil. And I brought mineral oil because that's usually what are in the commercial. It's a finer oil, it's refined, so it coats better. It doesn't clog. Like neem oil isn't bad, but if you've ever used 100% neem oil, you know that it stays very congealed. You need warmth and able to use it. Usually oils, insecticidal oils and insecticidal soaps both have both ingredients in them. Oils will have 3 parts to 1 part soap. The reverse is true. The soaps will have 3 parts to 1 part oil mixed in with water. Sometimes they might use a little bit of a slight detergent, like fantastic in a home remedy, like a teaspoon, just to help blend the 2 pieces together, because oil and water don't mix. The soap kind of helps, but the detergent kind of has that property. Green. What is that? Green. Simple green. Thank you. Senior block. A simple green, biodegradable, is a really nice additive to keep around because, again, it's not going to be around forever. When you use soil and soaps, generally it's a smaller application, but you really want to kind of penetrate the area in particular. And we'll get a little bit when the lights are up and you can see what is up here. But you only make up what is needed generally. It's better that way because they once they get exposed to oxygen and temperature changes, they break down relatively quickly. Insecticides, of course, we know, I think we've been sold the idea about insecticides. I think the problem for the public is one, is people are rather sloppy in how they mix things. Two is how much they use, how they dispose of, they make too much. How do they dispose of that? So these all cause problems for the entire community and just not one person. So I think, and plus having a toxic substance, and some of the old plant insecticides were quite strong. But you always make sure that you follow instructions, and you generally, if you're spraying, if you're sensitive, like I am to some of these things, I have to wear goggles on because I can feel it in my eyes and my mucus, and so I wear goggles, and I wear a light respirator if I'm actually going to use an insecticide. But do remember, in the sense that an insecticidal oil or insecticidal soap are still like an insecticide. So even though I don't have as much trouble at all, but generally I wear, I find my glasses are enough, but I still wear a mask with them. So, and that's a good question. Yeah, I don't think you're doing, no, off. So you're not doing the environment any favor. So if you cut it in half, it's like, doctor, if I take half the medication and take it longer, well, would that do better? No, you take the medication I gave you and you take all of it. So the risk you have with using insecticides that way is that you might be allowing evolution to kick in, that you're giving a certain percentage of that insect population the ability to survive a dosage. And insect generations aren't like our generations. Over the course of years, you can build, some insects have a greater tolerance. And that's what we have seen in the agricultural community and everything, is that you get that sensitivity. So you follow instructions. You don't dilute it like you can a fertilizer. You follow that instruction. That's what they suggest. That's what you use. That's how you use a true insecticide. Pardon?
What was explained to me through an entomologist who was a farm advisor, he's retired now, and he said that you always need to practice IPM, and the University of California has an excellent IPM website with information on it for all kinds of landscape plants. But start with the least deadly thing you need, and then he says we don't take off some of those big guns. He said if an invasive species comes from someplace, he needs to knock that out. And if you use something and it becomes, like you said, resistant, then you're not going to have that available. And also, you can alternate pesticides that have what's called a different mode of action. And you can alternate the modes of action so they don't get resistant.
So the nice thing, and that's why I like to say, start out with the little gun, but it's really effective. It's really effective, and it is a gun. It's little, but it's a gun. And what is a gun? A gun is a physical kill. None of us can escape a physical kill. We can't. Insects cannot also escape a physical kill. Both insecticidal oil, insecticidal soaps are physical kills. They're not toxic kills. The soap envelops the insects. Insects have exoskeletons. They breathe directly into their bodies. So when you put a film of soap over them, no oxygen is going in. You don't need to. And then the insecticidal oil does the same thing. It ensheaths them in the oil and they suffocate. The nice thing also I said about the soap is soap also starts degenerating the creatine, which is a protein-like substance that is the main support of that exoskeleton. So it also is a physical kill that way. So it's very, very effective to try first water spray, hose them off, start using, I usually start with the soap, and then if that doesn't work, I go to the insecticidal oil. Yeah, I'll show that. I'll go through all these that we'll see. Aphids, we all know aphids, so yeah, that's they produce and they can stunt really quickly. They grow really quick. They mature in days. That population grows exponentially. I haven't seen a lot of aphids on my orchids, but I have seen them on my orchids that I have seen them on have been my dendrobiums on new growth, which doesn't surprise me because I find that in the nursery as well on a lot of our plants. And midges, which we do get a little of these out here. I don't know a lot about midges, so if you see a flying insect that looks like that, that's a midge. They look like they more burrow into them. Have you had much problem experience with midges, Norm? Well, I mean, caterpillars can also bore into a flower as well. Have you ever had problem with midges? No? And he's a big grower. Did you have a question? No. Mites, spider mites, big problem because they're so tiny. And usually you see like that's a late start. That's greatly magnified. But you kind of almost see a silvery web underneath. It's usually always on the underneath of the leaf. And when you start seeing this, you've got a really bad infestation. And again, watering, dousing that, and this will take care of that problem. Go on to I keep getting my thumb. Slugs and snails, big problem. So basically, clean up. Don't keep old pots around your growing area, plastic where they can hang around and wait for the appetite to grow, and use some type of bait for them. And you can make, bait or homemade traps, but they're very destructive. So maintain healthy plants, right? Which we talk about. Monitor, get out there when you water. That's why we water, just to get in there and get out. But you observe your plants, which ones are having trouble, which ones are sending out new roots, so you have to repot. You're noticing all these things. Don't forget to notice maybe little chloric spots, which might be a sign of scale being produced, or something that's been chewed on? Is it a snail, or has it been a grasshopper that's come through, or what? And then you can look around and then select a process of getting rid of them. And is that it? Okay, turn on the light. I think that's it for that part. We covered all those group of pests.
Oh, there was biological.
So this is the actual, and you can still turn it on. So then this is what I talked about. Biological troll is again like ladybugs. So I think in our environment, you try not to do a lot of harm and spray everything. Chemical control is more localized. So where we can, we would like maybe ladybugs to take over or others, but that's a hard route for biological, because you'd have to have a lot of ladybugs to try to go ahead and get rid of it. If it's whitefly, you can't get enough wasp in time to buy them and get them in place. So it's good to have chemical control, but what are we going to use? Are we going to use really damaging chemicals for ourselves, or easier things? So one thing, let's start looking at going for something that you can do in a basic. If you have a big project, you'll need a pump sprayer, and those are usually 1.5 to 2, 3 gallon pump sprayers. And generally I keep 2. I keep one for fertilizer and one for oils and my soap. And usually I do very small applications with something more toxic, and I use these. So a lot of us only need this size because we have smaller projects, because we have less plants. And you can buy pre-mixed, or what they call ready to use, or you can make your own. It's really easy to make your own for the first 2 I talked about. Insecticidal oil, insecticidal soaps have the same basic concentration. So I'm going to start with a quart. So in a quart of water, 32 ounces, you would use 1 tablespoon of oil. This is mineral oil. It's the best. It's pure. It's very refined. And you use 1 teaspoon of soap. This is Castile soap. Good old Myers soap. This is olive oil. And Myers generally, Murphy's, I'm sorry. Murphy's, and Myers is another is mainly coconut oil to it. So those all work. So it's again 1 tablespoon per quart, 1 tablespoon, and 1 teaspoon of the soap. If you wanted a gallon, you just do 4. So it basically would be 4, because it's 4 quarts, and it would be, it's really, I really up it here. It would be 1 tablespoon of soap instead of 4 tablespoons. The reverse is same here. If you want to make the insecticidal soap, same thing, you just replace the oil for the soap. So it's for 1 quart, 1 tablespoon. and then it's just 1 teaspoon of the oil. Now you could add a little bit, like a teaspoon of simple green. Some people use Fantastic, something that is dissolvable. But that is a safe, quick, easy spray. But
alcohol and water.
I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just stay away from alcohol. So you can use that. So if you guys find that.
It was recipe about 2 years ago in our newsletter from Florida.
Right.
They called it
Bug juice.
They used 409 and 1 cup of water, half a cup of 409, a half a cup of alcohol.
I just don't like the alcohol. I just don't like the alcohol portion. Yeah. But if it works, it works. And it's been recommended by others because alcohol is known to have problems. It would probably be great I just would wonder if the Clos de Blanc, for the scale for that because it would penetrate in there. But I have no problem with that. But this is what works for me. So no, because it's not really, it would be better to be called dish detergent. It's all synthetics. They don't have the same properties that a natural soap has. So it's best to use what is an old-fashioned true soap, which you used as, again, it's based from the fatty acids that are found in plants and converted with treated a bit to create soap.
So
The original Dawn has changed.
Oh, okay.
And I knew that would probably come up. It used to be that you could use Dawn, and they had the picture on that, but I haven't seen that recommended anymore to say Dawn anymore. So I went this route. I think about 4 years ago, they changed that. And it might still work on the birds, but I don't know if it still works as well as the natural soaps do. So that's kind of the secret of using that. If you want other type of safer ones, I have to make sure there's always neem oil. Neem oil is good, but usually these neem oils are mixed with another oil, because usually at room temperature, I think at below 70 degrees, neem oil gets very viscous. It's like butter. So you can't use it as much. It's effective. It's more effective in the summertime. You have to be careful of neem oil burning a plant because it's so thick, it can coat the leaves, and you wouldn't want to use it around an orchid flower. That would spell trouble. Neem oil is also good as a natural fungicide as well. But it's a good product. This should be this, I can't read without. Yeah, this has the spinoside in it. Spinoside is an interesting. They grow a bacteria in culture, and then they harvest it, and then they centrifuge out the essentials out of it, and that becomes spinoside. And a lot of the properties that spinoside has turn out to be very toxic to insects, but to mammals, they have very low toxicity to mammals. So it's safe for people to use. It's been really used a lot by modern agriculture to replace a lot more toxic substances. The other one and these will all be part of the raffle table. So if you want to try to get some, you can, is I didn't get any BT, but we covered that through one question, BT for caterpillars. I always have to get these. Pyrethyrines are from Tanacetum, and that's a relative of the marigold family that's found in Central Asia. It turns out that from the flowers of there, they extract the compound, and that becomes a very effective insecticide. It has a short life in sunlight, and so just a matter of like 2 days, but it's very effective to use, very commonly used, especially something around for vegetables. And generally you would spray it at dusk. So that's something to look at, and they're always in very small part, and there's usually an oil around with them, and this uses a canola oil, which can be in a fine oil to help as a binding agent onto the plant. To get, rubbing alcohol for in-house or outside if you see mealybugs, a little bit of it. Q-tips and little carriers, but lots of people use Ziplocs. Water, which is my water. There's a lot of things for slugs and snails. I think the ultimate killer is that's it. When I lived in Seal Beach, because it was so moist there and I had so many pots and stuff, I used to use that's it. But also I didn't have, there was no grass, it was all concrete and everything, wasn't too worried about it. But that's it is very toxic. And it's poisonous to just everything. Sluggo isn't. And sluggo is our little pellets that have iron in it. And whereas we need iron, a slug does not. Mine have always been okay, but I think it's where you put it and how you use it. I've always found it effective. I put it on, snails are creatures of habit, and you can't use a little, you just got to spread it all around. When you water it with sluggo, it's a hard pellet. It will stay around for a long time. It's hard. It's not like Corey's or sluggo or that other.
The worst thing about snails and slugs.
Hear it?
They come from the neighbor's yard.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. And they can travel. I think somebody did a study once. I forget where it was, but they monitored, and it said you'd be surprised how far a snail can travel. They can travel like 500 feet is no problem for them.
It's a never-ending struggle.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Well, my solution was always, since it's a corner house, that I give them a chance to survive. I throw them up really high up in the air. So so they fall into the center of the street with a loud crack. And if they can survive the cars and everything. Another thing that I read, which is very interesting for like snails, is diatomaceous earth. So ground diatomaceous earth, not for swimming pools. It's got to be a horticultural blend. You put it out, food grade. You put it out, and what is in there, it cuts the diatomaceous earth, actually cuts into the surface, and it stops the mucus producing glands of the snail or slug. A simple thing that you need, copper is an old thing. Copper, they won't go past copper. Scrubbers to when you see a problem with scale, you can make a light solution of just put a little of the soap in a cup of water and start scrubbing away. You can put a little oil in that same solution, start scrubbing away. If you have a big problem, like in a fruit tree or something, you could take a scrub brush and get some of those and get some of the heavy areas off of a limb or something, like on a citrus tree or a mango tree or a guava. So and it can be even your old toothbrush. And these are pet does that cover all that? Any other guide over the diatomaceous earth? So these will go over. Any other questions that you've been here the whole time.
You have a bug that's laid eggs. So you treat the bug and then the eggs come.
So it's a great question. And that's why I said one of the first things I started out with, life cycle. Nature's big evolutionary step was the egg. Egg protects. It just protects like nothing else. And whether it's a reptile, amphibian, bird, or whether it's an insect or a fish, it protects. There's very few sprays that are out there that kills an egg. That's why, and eggs, insect eggs aren't out there for a year. They're short-lived. They start coming. You see aphids, they're done. You see they're pop, 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 like popcorn out there. Just a few days. So you have to do a follow-up application. Now, if you're pardon? Oh, no. So it depends on scale. Scale whitefly at the nursery, I tell people, I tell them for whitefly to be out there for 5 weeks. Yeah. With that. But don't forget, because whitefly you first get them and then they fly off. So you're not getting a lot. With whitefly, of course, this is not getting away from orchids, but you would take like on hibiscus, you just take those leaves and you just get rid of them. You just put them in a large 1 gallon, you just put them in there, you hose everything down with a high pressure, and then you start spraying. And then come back the first week. First week I would do it twice, and I'd hose it off again, and then I'd let it dry. And then the next day after I did that, so like 3 days, hose it down, wait a day, repeat the application. Then you could do weekly, once, and probably be done and over. So it's real important. you got to keep on following the young ones. And the eggs you're not going to get rid of. So you've got to spray to get the crawlers, the young ones, which are popping out and moving. There are some insects that sexually mature the first day they emerge out of the egg and can be sexually active and depositing eggs on their own. Any other questions?